When the cities bidding to host the 2026 World Cup submitted their applications, they included something that no previous generation of host city had been formally required to provide: human rights commitments, specific, documented, named pledges embedded directly into the hosting agreement as a condition of selection. Atlanta committed to raising hourly wages for event workers to $17.50 for the duration of the tournament. Dallas pledged active measures against human trafficking in proximity to venues. Vancouver established a zero-tolerance framework covering all forms of discrimination. These were not aspirational paragraphs appended to a bid document for appearance. They were contracted obligations made to FIFA, accepted by the governing body, and entered into the record as the foundation of what the 2026 tournament was formally supposed to represent. The Council on Foreign Relations published its assessment of those commitments on June 11th, 2026, the day the tournament opened. Amnesty International's concurrent evaluation reached a conclusion expressed in 2 words: human rights emergency, not partial fulfillment, not a mixed record, an emergency. In the principal host nation of the first World Cup in history, to have human rights criteria written into its selection process. That gap between what was pledged and what an independent assessment found on opening day is not one thread among many in the story of this tournament. It is a thread that all the others run through, and the problems it connects are not diminishing as the football begins. Several of them arrive this week for the first time. Start with the hotel sector, because a specific word appeared in the American Hotel and Lodging Association's most recent market survey that is worth holding on to. The word was non-event, not underperforming, not below projection. Respondents across multiple American host city markets used the phrase non-event to characterize the World Cup's commercial impact on their businesses. Their explanation was consistent: late room releases by FIFA and weaker than anticipated international fan attendance. Across 80% of hotels in U.S. host markets, booking levels are running below the initial forecast that operators use to staff and price their inventory. In Kansas City, demand is currently below a typical June or July without any major sporting event at all. In Atlanta, the host city that has received relatively more favorable coverage for its bookings performance, the Georgia Hotel and Lodging Association president framed the outlook in forward-looking language. Activity was expected to accelerate in the coming days. Expected to. Present tense at a tournament that had already been promoted as the largest commercial hospitality opportunity in American sporting history. The Newsweek analysis published 3 weeks before opening remains the most precise available summary. Supply outstripping demand across tickets and the broader services infrastructure sustaining the event. Supply outstripping demand at a tournament whose governing body compared its commercial scale to 1,000 years of combined previous editions. Now, here is what has developed since that assessment, because the problems are not holding still. Iran's ticket situation has taken a specific documented turn that goes beyond the allocation dispute that surfaced in the days before opening. According to Newsweek's Eve of Tournament analysis, Iran's group stage fixtures against New Zealand, Belgium, and Egypt carry the highest volume of unsold seats of any nation in the competition. More than 3,000 tickets remain available for each of those 3 matches. The Iranian Football Federation formally accused the tournament organizers of withdrawing the federation's allocated seat distribution in the days before the opening. That claim, made publicly by an official governing body of a qualified participating nation, has not been formally addressed in any public statement by FIFA. The allegation stands on the record. The seats are empty. The tournament has begun. And the explanation for why Iran's matches carry more unsold inventory than any other team to draw has not been provided by the organization that determined how that inventory was distributed. Iran qualified. Their players beat Mali 4-0 in their final warm-up match. They are based in Tijuana and crossing the border on match days. They are prepared and present. Their supporters, both those living within the United States who face no travel prohibition and those who could not obtain visas, are watching from wherever they can find a screen. The seats that should have been accessible to the diaspora community that followed this team are empty. That is a documented outcome of a situation the governing body has characterized as outside its jurisdiction. The pre-tournament injury picture adds another layer, and it is one that connects directly to decisions the governing body made for commercial reasons. The ESPN injury tracker published in the days before opening confirms the breadth of what the compressed and expanded football calendar has produced. Spain lost Fermin Lopez to a metatarsal fracture on May 17th. The Netherlands had already absorbed the loss of Matthijs de Ligt to back surgery, out since November, and then lost Jurrien Timber to a groin problem in the final days before the ceremony. Brazil are without Estevao, whose hamstring injury sustained at Manchester United in April proved substantially more serious than the initial timeline suggested, and without Rodrigo. Neymar arrived carrying a grade 2 calf strain, with a narrow and uncertain window to be available for the opening match against Morocco on June 13th. This injury list is not the product of random misfortune distributed evenly across a football season. The fifth pro-European league's complaint currently under examination by the European Commission argues specifically that the expanded Club World Cup and the compressed international calendar have placed player welfare under systematic pressure. The complaint uses the word abusive. The injury tracker going into this tournament is the most comprehensive practical evidence available that the argument the complaint makes is correct. Players have arrived at the World Cup carrying accumulated physical damage from a calendar FIFA expanded for commercial purposes. Some of the players who sustained ligament injuries at the Club World Cup last summer, required to participate by the same organization that is now requiring their fitness for 104 matches, are absent. Those who made it through are being managed session by medical departments, working in real time against conditions that pre-tournament preparation cannot fully repair. The finest football players in the world, at the peak of their careers, arriving at what is formerly the pinnacle event of the sport they've spent their lives preparing for, and a meaningful proportion of them are damaged, absent, or under active medical surveillance because the governing body that stages this tournament also staged a competition that compromised their fitness. That is the operational record. The comparison with previous contested tournaments is instructive because it establishes what is different about 2026. Russia in 2018 carried documented governance failures and geopolitical concerns. Qatar in 2022 carried sustained human rights concerns tied to labor practices and social policy. Both of those additions were controversial in concentrated ways. Identifiable categories of concern that generated genuine debates with positions on multiple sides. The 2026 World Cup is the first edition to carry documented evidence problems simultaneously across every functional category of major event management. Legal. Attorney General subpoenas examining ticketing practices remain active. Commercial. The non-event descriptor in hotel surveys with 80% of operators below forecast. Physical. Heat risk assessments projecting dangerous conditions across 26 matches. Labor. The worker strike authorization vote at SoFi Stadium. Medical. The injury accumulation driven by a calendar designed around commercial expansion. Diplomatic. A selected World Cup referee denied entry at Miami International Airport after 11 hours of questioning. Human rights. Amnesty International's emergency assessment published on the tournament's opening day. Access. Supporters from 4 qualified nations facing documented barriers to attending matches. Financial. The collective host city shortfall estimated at a minimum of $250 million. No previous World Cup arrived carrying all of those simultaneously. And critically, the problems are not static. The Iran ticket allocation accusation is new this week. The injury updates that removed Timber and placed Neymar under a fitness countdown are new. The hotel non-event characterization emerged in the 7 days before opening. The CFR human rights analysis was published on the morning of June 11th, the day the tournament began. The problems are accumulating as the football starts. That is a specific dynamic that distinguishes 2026 from every edition that preceded it. Now, here is what is also true, and it matters. Mexico and South Africa kicked off today in a stadium that has hosted World Cup finals in 2 separate decades, 1970 and 1986, and witnessed football's defining figures from 2 entirely different generations lift the same trophy in the same concrete bowl. 83,000 people were inside it when the whistle sounded. The opening ceremony featured Shakira. The match ball, the Tricoloria, the first rechargeable football in World Cup history, was on the pitch. What follows across 39 days will include some of the finest football this generation will watch. Messi at 38, in what he has indicated will be his final World Cup, is ready. Kylian Mbappe, one goal from France's all-time scoring record, is ready. Lamine Yamal, 18 years old, is ready. Players from 48 nations who have dedicated their professional lives to performing at this level are ready, and they will produce goals and results in individual passages of play that no preview or analysis can anticipate, and that people will be citing for decades. What that football will do is shift the terms of the conversation, not resolve the underlying issues. The Attorney General investigation continues irrespective of whether Argentina progress to the knockout stage. The heat risk in Houston doesn't diminish because a quarterfinal produces an extraordinary match. The question of what happened to Iran's ticket allocation doesn't close because New Zealand take the field on June 15th. But the football will give hundreds of millions of people something to watch that competes for the same attention surrounding problems have been occupying. Whether that competition ultimately defers a reckoning or replaces, it is the open question this tournament will answer by July 19th. The pledges were made. The commitments are on the record. The assessment published on opening morning used the phrase human rights emergency. Today at the Estadio Azteca, 83,000 people watched Mexico play South Africa. Both things are simultaneously true and will remain so. As the matches begin, as you watch the football that this tournament will undeniably produce, the question worth sitting with is this. Does the weight of what's been documented here stay with you as you watch, or does the football displace it? And if it does displace it, is that displacement earned by what the tournament delivers, or is it simply what spectacle does?